You also wrote an article that Andrew Berry has a chance for redemption. The other thing that it pops into my head is, that because of the Deshaun Watson trade, there were a lot of third-round picks. And when you hit on guys that are not skill position players, running backs, even linebackers, it's not as obvious. There are some guys in this draft that it's going to be obvious if you hit on early.
For sure. And that's the biggest reason, like that sort of inspired that article for me was just the idea that, we know Andrew Berry's draft history. The one resounding hit he's had is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and now we don't know if he's ever going to play football again, which is very unfortunate. You could argue like Grant Delpit, who got a second contract. You could say that Greg Newsome was, he's a fine pick. He's probably not getting a second contract, and that's ultimately what these guys are sort of graded on. But yeah, like I mean, if I don't know that he was a first rounder, but it's he's fine. He's turned into a good player. I don't know if he's turned into a great player. And so when you have like only one guy that really stands out, though, it is obvious, right? It is obvious what Andrew Berry's one hit is, and so that sort of then highlights the rest of the guys he's taken as not being very good. And so that's why it's been such a criticism of his over the years. And I understand like you didn't have first rounders because of the Deshaun trade, but at the same time, when you make a trade like that, you are banking on well, you're banking on two things. You're banking on Deshaun being worth it, of course, which didn't happen, but you're also banking on you and your staff's ability to still fill out the roster by finding and hitting on talent in those later rounds. And that just hasn't happened either. So he's put himself behind the eight ball here. But there is a world that exists where, there's if there's like three guys that hit on this class or hit in this class, he sort of redeems himself in a way, or at least starts to change the narratives about his ability to draft and evaluate and draft players. And it sets the stage for him to ultimately get a second stab probably next off season if it plays out that way, to find the thing that he's really going to be judged on, which is will he find the franchise quarterback for this team in the NFL draft? So the onus is on him. He's put a lot of pressure on himself, and it's up to him to sort of make sure to have these picks pan out, and then he starts to change those conversations about him. And I also think what's interesting too is like you could reach a situation where if the team is bad again, like if they really only do win 3 games, which I don't think is going to happen. I think they're going to win more than that, but Andrew Berry's draft class looks really good. He has like 4 guys that look like, they're going to be Pro Bowlers for years to come and maybe all pros. Then maybe there starts a conversation where it's like, well, does Kevin Stefanski still have a job at the end of the year? And it feels like Andrew Berry probably does have a job at the end of the year. Now, I think they're tied to each other, so ultimately probably wouldn't happen that way. I think Jimmy Haslam's going to let them both see this thing through at least till 2026, unless things go really, really awry. But I think that is an interesting conversation where it's like last year we would have said Andrew Berry is more on the hot seat, because of the Deshaun trade, and Kevin Stefanski was probably more safe. I think this year, if these guys hit but the team's still bad, it might be the opposite. So I think that'd be kind of an interesting thing to see how it plays out once we get to the season.
Let me throw this at you too, though. What if DeJuan Jones comes out and plays, and he's your left tackle, and Martin Emerson rebounds and looks like a 1A corner like he did? Then those drafts don't look as bad either. The thing is
Yeah,
as you're doing it in real time, everything is kind of relative. DeJuan Jones was hurt. Martin Emerson had a horrible year. If those guys can play like we thought they could, all of a sudden it's like, all right, you got a 4th-rounder who's a starting left tackle, you got a 3rd-rounder who's a starting cornerback. So that's kind of the danger in shifting it from year to year relative to drafts, isn't it?
Yeah, no, you're spot on with that, and there is still a chance somebody like DeJuan can become a foundation. And I think even if he doesn't make it at left tackle, Jack Conklin in the last year of his deal, there's nothing saying you can't move him back to the right side next year and see what he can do. So he's still kind of got 2 years to see if he can be a player that hits for Andrew Berry as a 4th-rounder. I still believe Martin Emerson is. I've been saying this for a while now. Like Martin Emerson had one really good year, one bad year. If he's somewhere in the middle, like that's still a pretty good player. You know what I mean? Like that's still a guy that you feel comfortable being your number 2 corner, at least until Denzel Ward isn't considered a number 1 anymore. So yeah, like I think there's a good opportunity both those things happen, and then you can start to feel a little bit better about Andrew Berry's drafts as well. You do have to give these things some time to breathe. There's Alex Wright, who is going to get a lot of opportunities at defensive end. Isaiah McGuire as well, who I think showed some stuff last year after Zadarius Smith got traded. So like there's still some room for those guys to grow. But I think it all adds up to this being like a really pivotal year for Barry in terms of, because right now the one thing he's got against him is the biggest thing of all, which is he is going to forever be linked to the worst trade in NFL history, frankly. So to overcome that, this is a massive year if he can get multiple guys from this year's class to hit. Is some of these late round picks that maybe were late bloomers and just took some time to get acclimated, start to sort of round into form or show that they can be members of this team moving forward. Then all of a sudden, I think the conversation around Andrew Berry does change.
Yeah, and you know what the other thing is he took Jedrick Wills 10th overall, and Tristan Wirfs was taking a couple spots behind him. Same position. Yeah. One is now not with a team, and one is a Pro Bowler.
Yeah. Well, and when you've only had, real quick, when you only had 2 first-round picks to this point until this year, like, yeah, it's pretty egregious when you're like, well, one of them's good, not great, and one of them was a complete bust. That's not great. So,
no.
Yeah.